Good afternoon, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone else. It's good to see you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
That afternoon sun is getting us. That's why I'm sitting here a little crooked as well. So it's good to see you, and I'm really pleased to be able to welcome everyone and let you know that we're looking forward to a great briefing and update for those who are participating today. But we would like to start off with just telling you a little bit about what to expect. Before we do that, we're going to give Commissioner Brooks an opportunity to provide some opening remarks for us. So Commissioner, we're going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you for the invitation to join this very important conversation. This partnership between United Way of Tarrant County, the city of Fort Worth, Tarrant County, and the Fort Worth Police Department is critical in breaking the cycle of violence, gun violence, that is plaguing our youth. We do not have one more kid to lose to gun violence in our community. And it's high time we all got together and had this conversation to decide what we can do about it. There are resources available, made available to United Way from both the city of Fort Worth, the Fort Worth Police Department, and Tarrant County government. And we are counting on our community stakeholders, Dr. McIntosh and others, to bring ideas to the table to help us solve this critical problem. I look forward to the conversation and look forward to working with each and every one of you. And thank you, Leah, for convening this conversation.
Commissioner, thank you. And just a special thanks to you, your team, the entire team at Tarrant County, the Commissioner's Court, as well as the staff that worked very hard at bringing us together. The same would hold true for City of Fort Worth. We know that our elected officials, our city council and mayor and city staff all worked hard to bring this together. And none of it would have been possible without just the willingness and partnership with the Fort Worth Police Department. And so we look forward to sharing what has happened to date and then what to look forward to going forward. And before we get too deeply into it, I just want to make sure that everyone who is participating knows who's on the line. So we're going to do quick introductions to let you know who will be visiting with all of you today. And then also I'll go through kind of what to expect on the rest of the agenda. And then if you do have questions throughout, feel free to use the Q&A box that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. So first, give me a second just to introduce who is with us on the line in addition to our very own Commissioner Brooks. We also have from United Way of Tarrant County, our Chief Programs Officer, that's Regina Williams. Regina, wait. Also from United Way of Tarrant County, who will pop in and out, is our Chief Communication and Marketing Officer, that's Dee Titzler. Next from City of Fort Worth, we have Assistant City Manager, Fernando Costa. Fernando, thank you. And then from Fort Worth Police Department, we have Assistant Chief Robert Aldridge. It's good to see you, Chief. Also joining us from part of our team at United Way, who's helping to oversee our large scale projects. We are very pleased to be joined by Mr. Garrett Landry, who is one of our overall project managers. Garrett, I'll be nice to Garrett. He's not feeling very well, and I'm so happy that he's still here with us. Also with us, we have, I think many of you know, Pastor McIntosh, who is critically important and has already had a lot of experience in working with Fort Worth Police Department and working with this initiative going forward to help scale and expand the the work that he and his team are able to bring to us through VIP Fort Worth. So, Pastor, good to see you. And last but not least, we have a good friend that we have come to know over the past several months who is joining us. I think you're still in Louisville, Louisville, Kentucky. All right. And Mr. Anthony Smith. Anthony leads Cities United, and you'll hear a little bit more about Cities United and how they will also work with us as we move this initiative forward. So that is who is joining you on the call today and who you should expect to hear from. What we'll do first is ask Mr. Fernando Costa to provide some remarks. We'll then move on to Chief Aldridge, turn it over to Anthony Smith after that, and then Garrett Landry will run through some items for you as well. And then we'll be closed out by Pastor McIntosh, and then we'll get to Q&A. So with that, I am going to turn it over to you, Fernando.
Thank you so much, Leah, and good afternoon, everyone. Happy to see we have so many folks participating in today's webinar. On behalf of our city manager, David Cook, I'd like to express the city's appreciation to United Way and to Tarrant County for their cooperation and support to prevent youth gun violence in our community. The Fort Worth City Council has assigned high priority to this issue, and accordingly, they've allocated some $4.4 million in federal funds to match funds from Tarrant County, and thereby to undertake a new and different approach toward addressing this issue at its roots. Our approach is new and different, I think, because we're emphasizing crime prevention rather than law enforcement alone. We're also emphasizing collaboration among police, other city departments, and other public and nonprofit agencies, with United Way contributing its extensive network of social services and funders. Perhaps most important, and I think that Leah has already alluded to it, as has Commissioner Brooks, we're emphasizing participation and leadership by residents and organizations from the same distressed neighborhoods that have been most directly affected by youth gun violence. You'll gain insight this afternoon from experts about why youth gun violence demands this level of attention. The causes of this violence are varied and complex, of course, but think about it. All of us who have attained adulthood can remember how volatile the teenage years can be. Add to this age-related instability the stress of living in a distressed neighborhood, perhaps even in a broken or dysfunctional family, with a high level of adverse childhood experiences. Add also the prevalence of guns in our society, particularly here in Texas, and add the mental health issues that have been aggravated by COVID-related isolation. Put all these factors together, and obviously we have a formula for trouble. And that's why we're seeking to address the root causes of youth gun violence. We can not only understand those root causes, but we can also identify and pursue practical solutions. And to begin that discussion, I'd like to call upon Assistant Police Chief Robert Aldridge to talk with us about how our police department is dealing with youth gun violence. Chief?
Thank you, Fernando. As Fernando mentioned, my name is Robert Aldridge. I'm the Executive Assistant Chief with the Fort Worth Police Department. Chief Noakes and I have many conversations, and one of the things that keeps us up at night is teen deaths because of this violence. We look through a lot of things through the lens of safety, wellness, and resiliency, not only internally, but with our community stakeholders as well. One thing that we talk about a lot is that we cannot arrest our way out of a problem. We need programs that are out in the community to help curb some of these teen gun violence incidents, to give some of these youth some other options instead of picking up a gun to solve problems in the community. We have quite a few programs through CCPD funding, which is a half-cent sales tax that the citizens of Fort Worth voted in, and we're very, very grateful for that partnership and relationship. I'm very grateful that Leah, United Way, and Tarrant County joined together in this venture to help reduce the gun violence, and more specifically, the teen youth violence in our communities. So we have, through CCPD, many partners with the shared mission grant opportunities with other programs that helps young individuals seek alternative things to do within our community without staying out late at night, hanging out with the wrong crowd. However, we need all the assistance that we can get because the police themselves, we have our own methods of dealing with violent offenders. But as Commissioner Brooks said, I mean, we need to do something different to break the cycle of violence with our young people. So I look forward to this opportunity. I look forward to working with Leah, United Way, and Tarrant County to see how we can curb this gun violence. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And now, Anthony, if you would share a little bit about Cities United, the work that you all do, and what we expect to see going forward, and in terms of the partnership with this particular initiative. And for those who are, I'm seeing just a couple of notes that people are trying to participate. The Q&A buttons at the bottom of the screen should be available for communication. Anthony, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Leah, and good to see you all. I think there's some slides that I want to run through. Deanna? Thank you. Just before I start and go into my slide, I just want to say that Tarrant County and Fort Worth, the city of Fort Worth, Texas, we're all dealing with a public health crisis, and we must address it that way. So when we talk about this work, and we want to make sure that we have a comprehensive approach to dealing with community violence, especially when it pertains to our young people, but also making sure that we're using our data to really inform our work. So it's good to see all the city, the county, and all come together to really address this issue together. Again, my name is Anthony Smith. I'm the executive director with Cities United. We're a national organization that work with communities across the country, working in partnership with them to help them and their communities develop comprehensive public safety plans. If you could do the next slide, please. We have partnered with over 130 cities over the last 11 years, helping cities really think through strategies and plans to really look at the root causes. As you heard the commissioner and the chief, and then also Fernando talk about, this is really about looking at how we stop the violence today, but also how do we look at the root causes and do upstream work to make sure that our young people stay safe, healthy, and hopeful. Next slide. When we think about advancing our vision and mission, our vision is really to create safe, healthy, and hopeful communities for young Black men and boys and their families. Those are the ones who are most impacted by community violence across this country. And our mission is to reduce the homicide rate of young Black men and boys in half by 50% by the year 2025. Next slide. When we think about our work, it really is how do we help communities reimagine public safety? How do we really look at how do we take a different stance and not solely rely on our law enforcement partners, but also look at the whole comprehensive approach to public safety? We break our work up into 3 big buckets. One, how do we interrupt the cycle of violence that communities are experiencing today? making sure that we have a strong CVI ecosystem, where we have a community violence ecosystem, where we have enough outreach workers, interrupters, and folks who can really get to those who are most at risk and help them find alternative pathways, while also working with systems to dismantle those systems of inequity that creates the environment for violence to be perpetrated. Lastly, we work in partnership with communities to really help cities and communities and counties think about how they reinvest their resources to really do the root cause work that we heard other folks talk about earlier today. The role that we really play here is really helping cities form relationships and connected partners, not just in their communities, but also across the country, to make sure that we're learning from each other and growing and keeping the network moving. We serve as incubators. We help folks think about strategies and programs and projects to not only enhance their work, but enhance their learning and sharing knowledge. And then we also provide we provide coaching and capacity building to key stakeholders who are really helping to lead the work and guide the work in their cities and in their counties. Next slide. We have a roadmap to safe, healthy, and hopeful communities that we come in and help cities walk through. We believe every city should have every community should have a comprehensive public safety plan that really looks at those three buckets that I talked about. First, how do we interrupt the current cycle of violence? Two, what are we doing to dismantle the systems that create the environment? And three, what's our investment, our long-term investment in this work as we think about it at the city and the county level? So we walk cities through this stage of not only how do we create that strategy, what's our implementation strat plan, what's our sustainability plan, and how do we plan to evaluate ourselves to make sure that the work that we're doing today is having an impact and really saving lives, but not only saving lives, but also creating better outcomes for those who are most at risk of being involved in community violence. And as you can see from these 6 milestones, we believe that folks need to know and be able to tell the story of where community violence is happening, who is it happening to, and how do we assess the risk and protective factors, and how do we make sure that we can do that work. We've got to engage leaders, as you heard Fernando talk about, leaders from all across the spectrum, and especially create space for those who are most impacted by community violence, and making sure that those folks who live in the communities, who are from those communities, have a seat at the table as we make solutions and divide our work. We believe this has got to be collaborative. We got to have a common agenda, a common goals and mission. And I'm thankful again to see so many people from so many different sectors already thinking through how we work together. We come in again and help draft and oversight the goals and the plans, and help develop the governance structure, and help do the evaluation and communication strategy. Identify and securing the resources. This is we know there's resources on the table now, but how do we make sure that we have resources for the long term in this work and moving forward? And lastly, how do we make sure that we have the right plan and is ready for public dissemination, so that it's not just a plan that sits in the office of the folks who wrote it, but it actually gets out to community, and community has a buy-in and supports the plan as we move forward. Next slide. I'm gonna go fast because I know we got to get to the conversation. Just real quick, our work in action. Next.
Anthony, take your time. We're good.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure. We come in, as you can see, we do assessment, helping the city assess where we are. Then we provide one-on-one coaching, really focus on empowering the folks who are leading the work in the city. Because a lot of times this is new work for a lot of people. So making sure folks have the right tools and the right resources and the right connections to get the work done. Train key stakeholders, those who are going to be making decisions, who need to know what's happening, and make sure that they have the right training and the right skill sets to really move this body of work. Again, long-term work that we all got to put in together. And then we just serve as a consultant to the city, to the partner, the community partner teams who are aiming to make sure that we can increase their knowledge and support the implementation of this of the approach that we all put together, the long-term comprehensive plan that we've been talking about. So as you can see, Cities United is really coming in and supporting the local folks on the ground. We're not coming in and taking over the work and doing the work. We're coming in and being a partner just to really make sure that you have the right tools and the right resources for the city and the county to really move this agenda forward. Not looking at just what we can do for the next 2 years, but what are we going to be able to do for the next 5 to 10 years to make sure all of our young people are safe, healthy, and hopeful. Next slide. Again, more services that we come in and we provide a citywide, a countywide assessment of what the prevention system looks like, who's doing the work, how well is the work being done, what are the gaps, what are the opportunities, what recommendations would we have for folks moving forward, making sure that we help develop this comprehensive public safety plan. Again, we believe every community should have a strategy and plan that's guiding and moving their work, making sure that we can not only build and leverage political will, but we can, and public will, but we can get those all working at the same partnership and at the same table, moving towards a structured goals and outcomes. How do we design and launch a governance structure? Who's going to pay attention to this on the day-to-day? Who's going to hold each other accountable to make sure that we're spending the resources right, that we're working in the right communities, and that we're moving towards the goals that we outline? How do we make sure that we engage the youth and individuals most impacted by community violence, right? So it's one thing to have a youth table. It's a whole nother thing to have a youth table of those who have been either are the victim, perpetrator, or the witness. And I want to make sure that folks hear me say, we've got to make space for those who have committed crimes, who have pulled the trigger, and who have been shot and who have witnessed to be at the table. Because folks are really trying to turn their lives around, and they have most of the solutions are there. So we want to make sure that they're at the table. Make sure that we have the right communication plan, because we got to raise awareness of community violence and its impact, but also not just what its impact is on the community that's most impacted, but what is the impact on the city and county-wide, and how community violence actually impacts us all. Again, identify individuals and community-based strategies to prevent community violence. For your strong community-based partners, who's doing the work, how can we build their capacity to do more, what kind of trainings and support do they need, and how do we make sure all of that's happening. Design a homicide and shooting crisis response team. We believe cities should be responding to shootings as a crisis that they are, not just that the police go out, but community, faith community, and all of our partners have a role to play, not only in how we respond to a shooting, but also how do we help the community heal and prepare for the healing process as well. How do we advocate and align our resources? We know there's dollars on the table now. How do we make sure that that's long-term? How do we make sure that we get general operating dollars from both the county and the city? How do we make sure our philanthropy partners are aligned and ready to move in partnership with us as we build this work out? And then again, communication, you'll see that over again, making sure we're communicating our strategies so that the community knows what we're doing, know that we're spending the resources right, know that we're hiring the right people, and have a say in, and then making sure that we're enhancing the organizational capacity of all of those who are doing the work, right? Because I think as we look through this and we'll start assessing and looking at who's doing the work, most of the organizations who are on the front line don't have the right resources to really address the issue that we're talking about. So these resources are going to really help them build their capacity to do more. But we want to make sure that that's not just a one-time deal, but that's long-term as well. I think this might be my last slide. The next one. And then again, coaching and capacity building, we come into again to help increase the knowledge and skills and the network of the key stakeholders, the folks who are going to lead and do the work, increase the comprehensive and collaborative approach involving all key stakeholders, which is what we're seeing today, but then also provide professional and personal development for those who are leading the work. So Cities United comes in and becomes a long-term partner in this work, really working aside those who are leading. We come in and help do some work around making sure we're building the right tables, bringing the right folks to the community, to the table to make sure that we're getting the best solutions possible. So we're excited about this partnership and look forward to working with you all. We'll be on for the rest of the call if there's questions for me later, but thank you for the time, Leah, and thank you all for this partnership.
Anthony, thanks again for being here. We look forward to working with you and the experience that you bring from so many other cities and communities around the country. We know you bring a lot of good best practices and really helping us to address some of the capacity building necessities that many of these organizations have so that we can really increase the number of people that we're touching. Before I turn it over to Garrett, I did want to take a quick moment and see if Commissioner might want to take a moment. Today was an important day, and we know that there were some not only a verdict handed down in the Tatiana Jefferson trial, but also sentencing. And while this is not directly aligned with what happened in the tragedy of the killing of Miss Jefferson, we know that it is connected, and we want to be sure that we don't miss the opportunity to honor her memory, to honor her family, and just wanted to give the commissioner a moment if he wanted to make some comments about what's happened today.
I think that this community saw a measure of justice in the killing of Tatiana Jefferson by former police officer, Fort Worth police officer, Aaron Dean. I followed the trial from its beginning through the end of the sentencing phase. And I think by and large, the jury got it right. There is nothing that the criminal justice system could have done to compensate for the loss of Tatiana Jefferson to her family, to the community at large. But we've got to be able to look to the systems that we have put in place to deliver justice. Justice looks different to just about everybody who was involved in this tragic situation. Justice looks different depending on where you're standing and how closely you were involved. But to get a conviction against a police officer and to get significant time to do is a step forward in this community. And I hope that the family and the community can feel that they have received a measure of justice, and that we can move on from here to try to heal our community. That is my hope, that is my prayer. And God willing, we can make some progress in that direction.
Thank you, Commissioner. We just wanted to be sure that we took a moment to appropriately recognize what happened today, and to encourage all of us to keep the family near into our thoughts and our prayers, but also to make sure that we are all prepared to engage in some type of work to help improve the systems. And so with that, what I'll do is I'll ask Garrett to share. We know one of the reasons that we're having this briefing is that we know that Commissioner Brooks's office and I believe Councilmember Williams's office had received a number of phone calls and inquiries about the status of this initiative. And so what we wanted to do was to walk those who are participating and those who may watch later, walk you through kind of a timeline of sorts of what has happened to date, and then what to expect going forward, as well as a couple of additional items that he will share with you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Garrett, who will have some slides pulled up for everybody to see.
Great. Thank you so much, Leah, and it's a pleasure to be with everybody this afternoon. My name is Garrett Landry. I'm the CEO of Steady State Impact Strategies. We are based in Tarrant County, so it's special and humbling to be able to do this work in our home base. And as Leah said in the beginning, we will be providing the project management support and much of the logistical support behind the scenes to ensure that this really important work can take place and move forward, and that those who are participating can do just that. They can focus on their engagement, their participation, and sharing their experiences so that we can have the most effective collaborative possible. We have a few slides to share that will go over timeline, but before I dive into those, I think what's really important for folks to understand is that the entities that are on this call from the very beginning have focused on being 100% transparent, open with communication, and engaging with the community. And so to that end, we wanted to show the work that's taken place from really May to now. There's been many conversations that have taken place, but to show that there are still some decisions that obviously have yet to be made, nor should have been made, nor should be made around the structure of the organization and the ways to move forward, because we need to get the community together to have those discussions. So if we could go to the next slide. The first two slides are timeline slides, and you can see a number of dates there and entities. And what I think is important to highlight a few pieces. One is, this is a 4-entity collaborative between United Way, the City of Fort Worth, Tarrant County, and the Fort Worth Police Department. And all of those entities have different processes, different protocols. And so what was an idea in May, it took a number of months to have critical conversations with Tarrant County commissioners, with Fort Worth City Council members, with elected leadership, with community members, to ensure that the concept paper that would be submitted for funding through both Tarrant County and the City of Fort Worth was where it needed to be, to receive the attention and the investment that we felt was required to really have a meaningful impact in this work. And so a few dates just to call out. You can see there in May, that was when the first ARPA application was submitted to the county. That award was approved in July, but the budget was not then approved of that award until October, which you'll see on the next slide. In August and into early September, there were a number of meetings with the Fort Worth City Council and City Council members, and the contract with the city was approved just earlier this month on December 1st. And so I think what the takeaway there is, we know that there were announcements when the county awarded their awards some months ago. There have obviously been a number of discussions with key elected officials in the city of Fort Worth from that point to early December. And once we got the go-ahead from the city in December 1st, you can see the representatives here, Mr. Costa, Chief Aldridge, United Way, Anthony, Commissioner Brooks, and the county team really have been working hand in hand to ensure that we could have this briefing and provide the public as much information as we have currently on where this collaborative stands. And so if we want to move to the next slide, it's, when we think about the 1 Second Collaborative, there will be a management structure to the collaborative, and it'll be anchored by a community-based steering committee that we hope is as representative of the county and the city of Fort Worth as possible, but with a particular focus on those who have been directly impacted by youth gun violence and all of the ways that Anthony mentioned earlier, because that is what's most important in coming to meaningful solutions for such a crisis. And so what you'll see there is you have the 4 organizations that we mentioned: the police department, the county, the city of Fort Worth, and United Way, which will all have representation on this steering committee. There will also be representation from neighborhood leaders of those communities that are most directly impacted by youth gun violence across the city and the county, as well as representation from the community-based organizations who have been in this work in some cases for decades, trying to provide impact, make impact and provide solutions to this crisis. Those processes and how those neighborhoods and community organizations will be, identified and proactively reached out to and resourced will all be, announced probably in the coming month or so when this group has a chance to really dig into, what's the best process to go about identifying those individuals. But as was mentioned earlier, the table is really important, and it's really important to make sure that we have the right experiences, the right expertise, and the right voices at that table to have meaningful impact. Now, what you'll see in a few slides is this is not the only way to be involved with this work. There are going to be many other opportunities for engagement across the city, across the county in very meaningful ways. One other piece that I will just highlight is that you will see there on the top a program director and support staff. There will be 3 individuals who 24 hours, 5 days a week, as much as humanly possible, this will be their work. There will be program staff that will support this collaborative, support this coalition, and will really ensure that the recommendations, the ideas that stem from the community, from the steering committee, are then actually brought into action and have the attention and the focus that it needs. So if we want to move to the next slide, in the spirit of maintaining a strong structure so that this is work that will live on and that the impact will live on, there will be bylaws for the collaborative. These will ultimately be finalized by the steering committee themselves once that is determined. But you can see things here, they're not overly complicated, but basic bylaws around what are the formal naming of the entity, what will the steering committee look like, how often will they meet. You will see that the committee will meet monthly in 3-hour increments, which just shows the intentionality and the focus and the importance that this work deserves. So certainly there would be a time commitment there, but again, those voices are incredibly important. And then there will be, a process for creating programmatic initiatives and, implementing the work that will flow through the steering committee, and that will all be codified so that it's very clear and it's very concise and very transparent. So if you want to go to the next slide, wanted to show, obviously this is a multiple month, multiple year initiative, but we know that there are certain things that have to happen in a sequential order in order for the impact to start taking place, and really for the programmatic work to start taking place once it's determined by the steering committee and by the the community at large at what that looks like. And so you can see in December and even before, there was a significant amount of time spent on the organizational structure itself. What does the back end look like? How do we get this lifted up to where when we hit the ground in January in the new year, it is ready to launch and ready to start running? And so you can see in January will be the program team staffing to ensure that those individuals are in place before the steering committee can come meet together, so that from the very beginning, there's a cohesive team and structure as the coalition and the collaborative moves forward. Starting in February is when we expect steering committee meetings to begin. And again, those would be monthly. We would expect, we hope for high level participation and engagement. And it would be a variety of different activities in those committee meetings. It would be, some learning and listening of experiences and data from the community. It would be collaborative discussion on what certain interventions could look like. How do we be proactive? What do all of the impact that we want to have look like, and how are we going to measure that work? Around the summertime is when we reasonably expect that, based on the work in the early winter through spring, that okay, here are the types of initiatives, the types of programming that we would like to begin to see if these have impact. And then there would be an appropriate process to put out RFPs and requests for responses for organizations that want to play a bigger role and really want to work hand in hand with the county, the police department, the city United Way, and implementing the programmatic work and doing that work on the grounds. And then every year, on an annual basis, there would be formal program evaluation to ensure that the work that is being committed to the community is taking place. What's the impact of that work, the effectiveness of it, and then the steering committee would have the opportunity to make adjustments as needed to the approach. The last slide that we want to show is what I alluded to earlier, which is a number of different ways to be engaged throughout this process. So of course, we've been talking about the steering committee participation itself, recognizing that even as an 18 member steering committee, that's still a rather limited group. There will be a number of subcommittees, and you heard Anthony allude to some of those that have been successful in other communities. So youth councils, faith community councils, civic engagement subcommittees, substance abuse prevention subcommittees, really stemming from what are the needs that rise up from community on how we can be more engaged in this work, how we can have greater impact in this work. And so as the collaborative begins to meet and the work starts, there will be invitations for those subcommittees to play a larger role there. You see there community assessment surveys. Always important to make sure that we are listening and hearing from those who are most directly connected to the work and those that are most directly impacted by youth gun violence. And so there will be a series of community assessment surveys and tools where we are seeking direct information from the community, perceptions of the work that's taking place. And then the last piece will be exactly what we're doing today. Might look a little different here and there, but public hearings and briefings. So at different intervals throughout the process, sharing out at large the work that's taking place, providing opportunities for feedback, providing opportunities for questions and comments, so that we are always trying to be as on the same page as possible and doing this in partnership with one another, and not dictating to any one entity or any one person or community what has to happen in their community around this critical issue. So again, humbled to be with this group and providing some of the logistical support to make this work happen. And I'm honored to be able to turn it over to Pastor McIntosh to have some closing words before we move into our Q&A.
First of all, I would like to say thank you to the city of Fort Worth, the county, Tarrant County, as well as United Fort Worth, United Way and other stakeholders, and just for having a desire to get in this lane and understand the necessity of this work. And I will just briefly share with you why I believe this collaboration is important and why it's needed, and not just Fort Worth, but now in our county. Man, I really am grateful for us to be able to expand this work or focus on it countywide. In 2020, between the ages of 1 and 19, right, there were 47 gun-related homicides. By August of this year, there were 17 young teenagers. They really not just little kids, teenagers who had been murdered or lost their life due to gun violence. And I've said before, man, if you lose one young man to gun violence, that's one too many. And the reason I say I'm thankful for this collaboration and us striving to do this work collectively together and in this entire county. VIP Fort Worth is a program that focuses on ending cyclical and retaliatory gun violence. We use the advanced peace model for those who may know what that is, just like a fellowship on a day-to-day basis, engaging these young men who are participating. And I think it was Brother Smith, man, thank you for saying even the people who have been victims and witness, because so many times we just look at the ones who are the perpetrators of the violence. But there are so many people, man, who have just been the victims that we strive to get out of this life or make sure they don't get caught up in the retaliatory violence, right? Feeling like they have to go back. But in August of 2022, this year, the reason I say that the county-wide is needed, because if we all was to just look, like the city of Fort Worth definitely has its problems, but I started to notice when we were doing this work that we had problems in Crowley. We have had homicides and houses being shot up in Forest Hill. There are hot spots in East Arlington. Of course, we know in Saginaw where the two young kids lost their life. So that lets us know that this problem is bigger than just the city of Fort Worth, that this problem is a problem throughout our whole county. And until we start to deal with the hot spots all over this county, no matter what we do in Fort Worth, we'll still be dealing with this cyclical and retaliatory gun violence. Because if I was to be honest, of course, the inner city still has like violence taking place, but most of it now is actually in neighborhoods that are no longer in the inner city because people have migrated to different places. So the necessity of us being able to come together and bring different resources to these young men is definitely needed. And I also want to just touch bases on the reason that this collaboration is necessary to be able to bring wraparound services. There are so many young men that VIP Fort Worth has dealt with, and I'm talking teenagers who, because of the lifestyle, have found themselves in a place to where they have nowhere to go. And Brother Smith touched on it earlier as well, man. Those of us who have been doing this work, who have been given the opportunity, man, and I do believe this is a calling to accept this calling to affect the lives of these young men. But it is difficult, especially in Texas, being honest, to find the funding, right, to do this work in this state. There have been so many young men who we've attempted to help who needed housing, right? And we just didn't have the funding to provide that housing. Young men who were dealing with mental health issues, and we just didn't have the funding to deal with, to be able to help them and to get them to the proper counseling. A lot of the times, a lot of this violence is done by young men who are struggling with substance abuse, right? And we didn't have in-house the funding that is needed to be able to deal with those problems that these young men are engaging in or that they're dealing with. So to be able to bring this collaboration together, and again, to see the county and the city understanding the necessity of dealing with this this crisis in our city. I always say, man, we talk about the pandemic, but this is an epidemic that has plagued the inner city for so long, that has plagued Tarrant County and Fort Worth for so long. To be able to be a part of this work and to be able to see people in leadership understand the necessity of doing it and being willing to put their money where their mouth is, man, I am truly grateful. And man, my hope is that Tarrant County, City of Fort Worth, United Way, Fort Worth Police Department, and other people in our communities who decided to do this work, that we could all come together, put our minds together, put our egos to the side, and I'm even talking me out today, man, and do what's necessary to make sure, man, we save the lives of young men in Tarrant County and in the city of Fort Worth. So again, I thank you all. Man, I look forward to this work, and I just pray, man, that we're consistent about it and get it done the right way, because too many lives depend on it. Thank you.
Pastor McIntosh, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody that's already shared briefings and updates. So before we get to the Q&A, let me just do a couple things. One of the main reasons that we're having this briefing today is to get the word out there on what the status of the initiative is post the approvals from our elected officials at the county and at the city, and then the respective contracts being signed between the county and the city and United Way, and then what to expect on to happen next. The ones that you see on the screen today are the ones that are in contract with one another. These are not the only organizations that will be included. In fact, it would be silly of us to think that we would be able to get it done. We cannot do it without all of you. And that's why I'm happy to see so many of you on the line. So we expect to have hospital systems engaged, school districts engaged, childcare facilities engaged. There needs to be a comprehensive group of services that come together, and we're speaking the same language, that we are measuring the same things, and that we are doing what we need to do to serve not only these young people, but oftentimes their families. So if you do not see mental health services providers on the screen today, that does not mean that they will not be a part of this. They will be an integral part of this. So look forward to engaging, but the point today was to get the word out because we know that there are a number of you that are already in this work, and we need to come together so that we are properly addressing this in as most comprehensive way as possible. Also, you saw the structure of the organization, that really the majority of the people that will participate in the steering committee will come from community. So individuals from neighborhoods that are identified as kind of priority neighborhoods, and then also from organizations who are already doing this work and have been doing this work for some time. Those will be kind of the bedrock, if you will, and then the organizations that are in partnership with one another that are on the screen today will also be at the table. In addition, there will be a number of subcommittees, because this is going to take a large group of us coming together and literally rowing in the same direction, having our common goals, and then reporting back out to our community, so that those who are seeking to see what's the progress, that they have very good knowledge of where we are, where we're going, and what to expect. So the communication piece, you heard reinforced time and time again by Anthony, as well as Garrett. So you can expect to have some type of routine briefing. It may be in person, it may be online, but we expect to have at least a monthly update that we report back out to the community on what has happened so far and what is yet to come. So with that, I know that we had a couple of questions in the Q&A. I might ask Regina to come on and help guide me on what still needs to be addressed.
Absolutely. Leah, I believe you touched on, and Garrett may have touched on it, but one of the questions from Dr. McFarland and also Ricky Clark in regards to the school districts and their role in all of this.
Yes. So I'll share some thoughts, and Anthony, if you want to share some as well, feel free. But it is essential that the schools are involved at every level, because without you have the young people for the majority of the day. You all hear oftentimes some of the things that are happening within the schools, and we need to have a process and a system, but definitely intend to have the school districts engaged, because we know that, just as Pastor McIntosh shared, a beef can go from across the street, but we might be crossing a city line, and that doesn't mean anything to someone that is intending on causing harm to someone else. The boundaries don't matter, and so we absolutely can and should expect to have the school districts at the table. Anthony, do you want to share maybe in some other cities how the school districts have participated in initiatives like these?
Yeah, thank you, Leah. And that's a perfect question. To your point, schools are very important. Schools play an important role just for kids' safety, but also, to your point, the teachers and the administrators and the staff know a whole lot about what's going on. So making sure that they're in the loop and at the table for shared information, just so that we can keep our young people safe. Baltimore actually just have just really started having interrupters inside of their schools alongside of SROs and counselors and stuff like that, making sure that there's some folks who know how to do conflict resolution, know how to do interruption work, and are really palatine in the schools. Because when you all look at the data, you also start seeing some of the similarities of where the kids go to school who are also impacted by this, right? So making sure that we're having resources to get to those young people and their families and all the different places that they show up is going to be key and important. And lastly, I will say that part of what the opera dollars also did for schools is the administration was real clear that schools can use those resources for community violence intervention work as well. So making sure that the school system is really clear about how they allocate those resources to build up their capacity to really reach that targeted population of young people who are most at risk would be important for the work.
Perfect, thank you. And then a couple of additional questions that I see. One is in reference to gun control, and I just want to say that this is not a gun control initiative. Our objective is obviously to get the guns out of hands of young people who are not licensed, who are not registered, and who may have intent on causing harm. But the focus of this is preventing the violence to begin with. We understand that gun control is an issue, is a challenge within our society. But the focus of this initiative is going to be on providing alternatives to young people to resorting to violence. There's another question in the chat
Yeah,
that is
but
about, oh, please do.
yeah, I think also the chief would probably agree is that also stolen guns, making sure part of our conversation is around storage and locking up your guns and not leaving them in your cars, and making sure that if you are going to be a gun owner, be responsible as possible. So making sure that your gun got locks, making sure that you lock them up. So I know a lot of the things that we're saying are used stolen guns, and folks are finding them in cars and finding, are really getting their hands on them. So I think part of our messaging is not gun control, but being responsible gun owners and making sure that you lock your guns up and have safeties for them. I just wanted to add that to that piece.
No, thank you. Very important. And the other question is about priority neighborhoods. And those will be identified in a couple of different ways, but primarily through data, through where we see the issues happening most routinely, but also from input from the community. And so it won't be solely data driven, but data will be an important part of identifying. Just to reiterate, our focus is the county, and the city has already started on some of this work, and the police department has started on some of this work, and they have researchers already doing some identification, but that is related to the city of Fort Worth. And so it's why it's important that we have a more of a broader assessment that you heard Anthony talk about, so that we're not focusing only on the inner city. We know that that there's issues there, but we also know that there are adjacent communities that are also experiencing some challenges, and so we want to make sure that we're addressing all of those. Let's see. I think that was the last question in the chat. Regina, is there anything that I didn't answer?
There are some where we responded, but I would kind of toss to you, lifting up Melinda Hamilton and the Mothers of Murdered Angels. I know we touched on the role of survivors, mothers, grandmothers at the table. Just want to lift that to you as well.
Thank you. I just found it here. So for those on the call, Mothers of Murdered Angels, that is led by Melinda Hamilton, has been working for quite some time on addressing gun violence, and she helps specifically with survivors who are helping to bury their loved ones. Her organization goes to court with them. She helps them with the trauma that they're experiencing, and expressing interest in being at the table. And absolutely, there are a number of organizations, much like Melinda's, that are touching families in different areas. And so part of what we will be doing through that assessment is identifying the organizations that are doing this work, what specifically they're doing. So when you heard Anthony talk about identification of the gaps that exist, we'll know if there are any gaps in our ability to respond as a community. And those are the gaps that we have to work on filling. So we'll be doing this in concert with each other. So Melinda, thank you so much for being here and for sharing that information. And then I think there was something, has the process been determined on community at large members? No, that was something that you heard Garrett allude to. That process will start likely in the early part of the new year. We have to first have the staff that is hired here, and then putting together the representatives from each of these entities, and then we'll be putting out and making public what the process is for the community at large, individuals and organizations that want to serve on the committee itself. But also remember, we also mentioned there will be a number of subcommittees as well. So whether you serve on the main steering committee or not, the subcommittees will also be integrally important, and we won't be able to do this work without that committee is only 18 people. And so y'all know that that's not nearly enough to be able to lead and guide the work that we're going to have coming forward. There's a question about childcare centers. Will there be a role? Absolutely, there will be a role for childcare centers, because again, we have to be able to have organizations that engage with young people that may hear or see things that they need to have a process for how is it that they should share information that they may hear about, but also there may be training that we need to provide to them for any individuals or for children that may have experienced trauma. So it is very important that the child care centers are engaged as well. I think William is asking about going to find statistics, but I may have missed something earlier about the statistics he's looking for. So while you have that, Regina?
I do. So William is looking for the stats of teen gun violence in Fort Worth and how that may relate to other cities throughout the state.
I might ask Chief Aldridge and Anthony to tackle that 1 and 2, if you guys would.
Sure, I have no problem doing that. To find the statistics, we definitely have the statistics. It's a matter of us putting the report together and sharing it with everybody. I don't have it right offhand. I don't have the numbers right offhand, but we have seen an increase in teen gun violence in the city of Fort Worth this year. And it's extremely concerning to us. But as for a place to go look for it, it actually would be easier for us to kind of compile that information and provide it.
Perfect.
Excuse me. And I'll just add, there's a new CDC report out right now that talks about the increase in youth violence across the country, and it compares and contrasts different cities. But I think to the chief's point, it just depends on what cities we want to look at. Are we looking at similar sizes? Are we looking at countywide and just different things? But numbers are out there for us to compare. But I'll put the CDC report in the box for William and others to look at. But I think that report is really helpful. It just came out today, I think, and it's just really good outline. And it talks about the increase that we're seeing state to state and young people dying by guns. So I'll make sure that that's in there, Leah.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And then the other thing is, as you all heard Anthony mention, that there will be, reports and measures and evaluations that we do on a, the evaluation will be done annually, but the reports will come out much more frequently. So we'll be able to benchmark ourselves against other communities. And because of the work that Cities United has already done in other communities, we'll be able to learn from some of the work that they've done and things that they've implemented and that we can determine whether or not it's going to be appropriate for us to consider for our local communities. Some of them will be, some of them may not be, but that's for for us to decide as a community. There's a question from Ken, actually 3 questions. So I'm going to read all 3 questions and then we'll come back to them. Is there a goal here primarily to create a cure violence style program featuring interrupters? Question 1. Question 2, is there room to talk about getting guns out of the hands of adults, who are at risk of harming youth, adults who the law prohibits from possessing? And then 3, can we get a budget on the elements of the program that have already been established to get caught up with things? So on numbers 1 and 2, cure violence versus featuring interrupters. To me, language is important. So I'm going to ask for support from Anthony on the use of the words cure violence. And again, the question is there a goal here to create a cure violence style program featuring interrupters?
Yeah, I think part of it is we've got to do an assessment of what's already going on. You want to have a comprehensive CVI, community violence ecosystem that would include interrupters, that would include outreach workers, that would include folks who are doing case management for that targeted population. And you also heard Pastor McIntosh talk about the advanced peace model, which is another piece of this work as well. So we want to create the best possible community violence ecosystem for Tarrant County and Fort Worth. So we want to come and look, but it will include models like the cure violence model that focus on the interrupting of violence, and how do we make sure that we have trained team members who can really get in front of those who have a gun and those who would be shot and really squash that beef. So we would have to really do some assessment of what you all already have going on and then think about what do we really need to build out that CVI ecosystem. And again, it would include all of those different pieces, including the survivors, because that's a big piece of this conversation as well. That's part of the healing process, but also helps us with deterring the retaliation and the work as well. So we will look at all of that just to see what's happening already in the county and in the city, but then what are the gaps and how do we fill out the best comprehensive strategy for you all to get the work done?
Perfect. Is there room to talk about getting guns out of the hands of adults who are at risk of harming youth? In parentheses, he has adults who the law prohibits from possessing. So I think the way I'm reading that is for people that are that have some prohibition against owning a firearm or weapon that might be at risk of harming a young person is what I think Ken is asking. And yeah, I mean, that's certainly going to be something. And Chief Aldridge, I'll lean on you for that. But that's something that, in my estimation, would and should be going on at all times. If there are people that have prohibitions against owning weapons in general, regardless of who it is that they may harm.
Yeah, so one of our violent crime strategies that has been throughout the year is to take guns off the streets for people that cannot or should not be possessing them, because that's the primary tool where we notice, people are getting injured or killed. And so if we have the ability to take those weapons off the street, we're definitely going to do it. And we definitely use our cameras in our city. We have quite a few citywide cameras that we leverage that technology to identify individuals that are either at certain locations that have firearms. We're able to strategically remove them from the crowd and get that firearm and determine if they have it legally. We do that. We've done that all summer long, and we've removed quite a few firearms out of the street. Now, the ones that are stolen, but we definitely have quite a few that people should not have been possessing them, that were felons in possession of firearms. And so that is one of our top priorities.
Perfect. Thanks, Chief. And then the last part of this question was about budget. Yeah, I don't think we have the budget on our website, but it's on the city's website, on the counties. We have one that's consolidated between the city and the county with categories. So we'll make that available so that you can see what the funding looks like that will be going out to community-based organizations, which is the predominance of the funding will be to help expand the ability of the organizations that are doing the work to be able to reach more people. You'll see funding in there for evaluation so that we can measure what we're doing and make adjustments as needed. You'll see funding in there for a steering committee as well and management of that. You might, that's not extensive, but there are some expenses associated with that. So we'll make sure that we have a consolidated budget that's available for you. There were people that were asking about this reporting in the Zoom link, so we'll be sure that we send that out. And what we can do is we can link a budget to that Zoom link as well, and that way you'll have that. And I'll get with our team. We don't have a separate page on our website for this initiative. Let me talk with Dee and make sure that she is not jumping out of her seat right now, because she's doing a website overhaul for us. And this might add one more thing, but it's important, especially if we want to be sure that everybody's able to get information on it in a timely manner, that we have some kind of mechanism and location for for the community to be able to access information. So give me a little bit to work with our team to identify what's the best way for us to handle that. With that, I'm going to go to Regina for a second, make sure it looks like we've answered the questions out here, and we will be able to come back sometime in January with our next update. And Regina, am I good?
I've scanned. I think I'm good.
Okay.
If I've missed anything, if you all could please just drop it back in the Q&A. But Lee, I believe you've gotten everyone.
Perfect. Let me just first say thank you for all of you for joining us late on a Tuesday evening to hear a little bit more about this information. And certainly, again, just major thanks to our community leaders for seeing the need and the urgency of investing in a program like this, and really helping us to bring others together that are focused on this work so that we can work together to bring forward ideas solutions that help us to do a better job of serving our young people and giving them appropriate alternatives and exposing them to things that may give them, some new things that they might be interested in. And really looking forward to working alongside each of you. And with that, I just want to thank you again for joining us. Wish everybody a very, very happy holiday season, happy New Year, and be on the lookout for communication from us. Please feel free to share as we send this Zoom link out if there are those that you feel that were either unable to join because of timing or that didn't know about it. Share this with them, and we'll be sure that we'll do our part to continue to expand our list of communication as well. So any final words from anybody that's on here before we bid the folks adieu? No? All right. Thanks again, everybody, for being here. It's great to see you, and let's wish all of ourselves well as we move forward to do this important work on behalf of our community. Good night, everybody.